you have an acoustic guitar that's about the size of an electric guitar. This is a Martin D Jr. And before we get started, I'd like to thank Guitar Center for sponsoring this video so we could check out this guitar and do this deep dive. Well, let's start with the gig bag. You can see it's a really nice hard foam bag. They actually label it as a soft case. Beautiful color gray, which I think is a smart idea because sometimes the black gig bags, they get dog hair, cat hair, dirt, and I think the gray is just a little nicer with stitched logo instead of a silkscreen. The other thing that's really interesting about the case is the sides have this rubberized seam on the zipper. Definitely probably not waterproof, but it looks water resistant. In other words, if you got caught in the rain for a few seconds, you might have a shot. Let's open this thing up. And it's really, when you see the bag, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's really nice. You can see here, beautiful crushed blue velvet with a really nice foam block. So what looks like a Dreadnought style guitar is correct. However, it is a Junior, so it's smaller. Look at that. And for reference, the guitar is about 38 inches long from the headstock to the bottom, and it's just a little over 14 inches wide and 4 inches deep. And then scale-wise on this is 24.9 inch scale. And with that being said, let's get into the geeky stuff. Just so you know, nothing comes in the bag. No real tools or anything. So why would I say this is not travel when it's made smaller? Well, you could travel with it. However, this guitar is 100% solid. So what we have here is a spruce top. So it's a two-piece solid spruce top with solid back and sides. It's a sapele back and sides. The neck is just is mentioned as being solid solid wood. This looks like sapele to me, or a mahogany. I think what they're doing is they're basically alluding that seasonally throughout time they might change the specs on the neck wood for the model. But this looks like mahogany or sapele to me. The neck, of course, has the typical multi-pieces. You have a piece right here. And then you have a quarter sawn one-piece neck where it looks beautiful, and even though it's a satin finish, you can't feel the grain. It has a rosewood veneer on the headstock to give it that classic Martin look with, of course, the Martin logo. You have a Corian nut, which is a hard material. They use it for countertops. It's going to be a lot like bone. And then you have a Richlight fretboard. What looks like ebony is Richlight, which is man-made material. And then you have 20 nickel silver frets. The bridge is also going to be Richlight with a tusk with a Q saddle, plastic pins, and a little cool thing I've mentioned many times. If you see a tortoise style pickguard on an acoustic, it alludes that it's a solid top. That has nothing to do with the brand. Just typically everybody tends to follow that rule. So if you were in a store or if you're somewhere and you see an acoustic and it's got a black pickguard on it, you can almost assume right away that it's a laminate top. And if you see a tortoise pickguard, it's a solid top. And like I said, there'll be an exception to that, but I bet 9 out of 10 times you're right if you follow that rule. The other interesting choice is these tuning keys. They went with the Martin tuning keys, but these are satin. So it's like a satin nickel look, and it's not really nickel. It looks like they're painted silver. I don't really have any opinions about that. I don't know if I like them or not. Nothing about that. It's like, it doesn't discourage me, but it doesn't make me love the guitar. I mentioned this is the Martin D Jr., but it's also the E, which electronics. So it has electronics. So you have electronics right here in the back, and that's where your battery is. So there's your output jack, and then of course your strap button. And then inside the sound hole, you're gonna have the Martin E1 system, which has essentially a volume and a tone control. And there's two buttons. There's a phase switch to put it in and out of phase. More importantly, there's a button right here that turns on that tuner. And again, very smart. It's done. Look how I'm holding it. I'll let you see. I'm looking right down in the sound hole. So what's great is when you're on stage, or in front of your cats and dog and on the couch, they don't know you're tuning. They think you're just looking down at your guitar. So this is a cool feature. So the question is, can you travel with it? You can. Keep in mind though, it's a solid top and a solid body guitar, which means you need to keep it humidified. Definitely 40% humidity to 60% humidity. An average of 50% would be great, but you definitely don't want to get into the 20s and 30%. You could see this top crack is possible. Even with the Martin bracing system, it's still possible. That's the main concern I would say with traveling with this guitar. And that's why I said it's a little something different. Here's why. This guitar it's made in Mexico and it's $699 with that gig bag. If you have a nice acoustic, I think that's really what this is marketed for, is like you have a nice acoustic, but you don't want to pull that out right now and play it because either you're on the couch or you don't want to disturb anyone in the house or the apartment, and or maybe you do want to travel with it and you just like have a more discerning taste when it comes to what you travel with. Okay, let's get some measurements because I know you guys want them. The first one is probably, let's talk about the radius. Looking at the bridge, we're looking at the bridge and it's a 16-inch radius. So I want to see what the fretboard is radiused at. And I'm going to say 16-inch radius. Looking at the nut, we were at 44.53 millimeters or 45 millimeters, which is 1.753. Looking at the 12th fret, we're at 53.87 millimeters or 2.121. Thickness at the first fret, 21.26 millimeters or 0.837. And thickness at the 9th fret is 22.15 millimeters or 0.872. Let's see how they shipped it. Looking at the neck, we see just a little bit of relief. Okay, and looking at the relief at the neck, so we're looking about 8 thousandths. And then let's see how they ship that with the action. Okay, looking at the action on the 12th fret, we're at 2.5 millimeters on the low E, 2 on the high, 2 on the B, the G, 2 on the D, 2.25 on the A. And we'll see if there's any dead notes or high frets. Okay, no high frets. Now this is a good time to mention that on acoustics especially, we let them sit here for a while. This guitar is sat here for over a month, and we want to see if it develops a 12 fret hump, which is typical with acoustics. The body and the neck essentially dry at different rates, and sometimes what you have is this, what they sometimes refer to as a 12 fret hump, where you just have dead notes in this area, and we do not have that. It's probably the Richlight. This guitar has been in this room, so it's been sitting at about 48% humidity to 40% humidity for the entire month that it's been here. So let's do a sock test. Switch this camera, and we'll go with the treble side first. Feels good, but it's catching a little bit towards the bass, but look at that. So pretty good. I'm gonna call that a 4 out of 5 because there is slight marks, but feels pretty good. And most of those marks, you can actually see a piece of the sock right there, were happening right about here. So interesting enough. And my guess is, obviously, the Richlight probably did not shrink. Most likely what happened was they just didn't polish those off as much. Let's go ahead and go to the bass side. And interesting enough, nothing on the bass side. We'll give that a 5 out of 5, which is great because now we can test the bridge. And no issues, nothing catching, feels pretty good, no sharp edges. In fact, really nicely rounded off. Everything about the bridge feels really nice. Let's look inside. We'll look at the bracing and see how well they did that. I've looked inside a lot of acoustics at a lot of different price points, and typically guitars that are about this price or a little bit below, you start seeing a little bit of sloppy glue work, and it's not the end of the world. This guitar looks super clean. I mean, you can really nitpick some areas where I'm like, okay, it looks clean. The joining wasn't as tight as I hoped. However, the absolute quality of the way it was put together, comparatively speaking, like I said, we're not comparing this to a $3,000, $4,000 acoustic, but comparatively speaking to acoustics in this price range, everything looks really nice, glued with the proper amount of glue, so there's not just glue dripping everywhere. It looks pretty good. Everything looks nice. Like I said, some of the fitting is not as tight as you would hope, but you would not expect much more for about this price point. This is a good time to mention the finish is a satin finish. There is a sheen to it, so it almost makes me believe that they did shoot something on it that's just very thin, because you can feel the grain. So that's what I would tell you, whether there's a finish or not. It's satin finish, and you can definitely feel all of the grain when you touch here. And on the neck, not so much. So in other words, you can feel the little micro bumps in the sapele in the body, but on the neck, it is rather smooth to the touch. And that's a good time to mention, what is the neck shape? The neck shape is definitely a C carve. And it's what I would call a typical Martin shape. If you've never played a Martin, just go play one. and this is not different than any Martin I've ever played on average when you pick them up. They just have that kind of thinner neck, not so chunky acoustic feel. This is gonna come in at 4 pounds, 4.09 pounds, or 1.855 kilograms. Now this is a good time to mention that if you missed a detail or if there's something you're interested in that I didn't say, it's going to be on the report I make on these guitars. There's a link in the description that takes you to our website and you can learn more about this guitar. And let's go ahead and play it. I have it mic'd up with a Zoom H5 Studio, and that way I can kind of get a representation of it in the room. And let's go ahead and just give it a play, and then I'll show you the electronics. Let's try the electronics. The first thought I had when this guitar arrived was, you know, why is this different than a Martin mini guitar? I mean, it's just a little larger. It's an in-between. It's a size medium, if you will. You know, it's small, medium, large. It's not a full-size acoustic, but it's not the travel mini acoustic. But there was something after playing it for a while that occurred to me. It doesn't look like it. I'm looking at the screen so you guys see. In fact, even now it looks bigger. But if you look at them, look at that. So essentially, you have an acoustic guitar that's about the size of an electric guitar. And I think that's the logic here, right? It feels, doesn't feel kind of like small, but it doesn't feel like my arm's up high. You know, when you're holding a Dreadnought, your arm's like this. This brings it down, and it's full sounding. The important part though is they nailed the quality aspect. That's got that down. I mean, it feels good, it looks good, it sounds good, and I think that's the big takeaway here. As always, I want to thank you for your time. Till the next time, know your gear.